A man is unable to park his car because of a bicycle. He then gets out of the car and kicks her. The bike owner asks why he did that. He says the owner should put his bike somewhere else and that when he manages the place, he won't be able to do that anymore. The owner of the bicycle says that they had studied together, but the man says that it was not possible, because in his school there were only rich people. The owner then says that it was in college, but the man denies it and says that he would soon become manager there and he would no longer put his bike there. Later, inside the company, the secretary comes in and asks if they were there for the job interview. The man then says yes and introduces himself to the woman. The other man also introduces himself and the secretary asks if they had taken their resumes. The man says he had sent it by email, as he thought paper was outdated. The secretary then tells them to follow her. The secretary then greets her boss and says that those men were there for the job interview and that she was going to leave. The boss then thanks her. The man then says that he hasn't seen the boss for a long time and she agrees. He then says that he had seen the job vacancy and that it was already his, as he was now qualified. She then says she's glad he finished his college. He says he was finally able to finish. The other man then hands over his resume and the boss asks what his name is. She says that she had analyzed the man's resume and had come to the conclusion that he had the profile her company was looking for, so the vacancy was already his. The other man then says that she hasn't seen his resume yet. She says she didn't really see it, but the man was the qualified person she was looking for. The man then says that besides that, they've been friends for a long time and she agrees. The other man then asks her to just look at his resume, but she says that the vacancy she could offer him was a cleaner. He then says that he had gone to college too and that he was just as qualified as the man. She then says that she was very busy and that was the only vacancy she had. If he didn't want to, he could withdraw. The man then tells him to look at the clothes he was wearing and that the two of them were very different. The boss then says that because she is the man's friend, she would give him the job and knew he would do the job right. The other man then says he had no option as he had kids to take care of. She then says that at the end of the hall he would find the equipment so that he could start working. The man then asks if she could show him to her room and she says yes. She then takes him to the living room and he marvels at the computer he had there. She says that she had invested a lot in good quality materials and that this way she would be able to work more efficiently. He says he liked it a lot. The boss then starts to explain to him what he would have to do. She says that on her computer he would find everything necessary for him to start making the spreadsheets she needed, but that she needed them to be done very carefully so as not to have mistakes. He then asks what is the deadline for the delivery of that work. She says that an hour would be enough time for him to finish and that in that time her investors would arrive for the meeting. He then says that he would and the boss says that if he needed anything, she was in the next room. The man then gets desperate because he didn't know how he was going to do that. He says he couldn't do it in that short period of time. He then decided to search on Google as he would a spreadsheet. He soon gives up and decides to call someone to see if he can get help. Then the other man enters the room to clean it up. He starts to clean up, but the man tells him to go away, because he was disturbing him. He says he just wants to clean the room, but the man says he was working and it got in his way. He says he needed to do his job, but the man says he was supposed to clear his desk then. He then tells him to get him a glass of water. The other man says he wasn't paid to fetch water, but the man says he would get it anyway and that he had just been hired and would be gone if he didn't get his water. He then gives up arguing with the man and leaves. The man then goes back to trying to figure out how he was going to do his job. The other man then returns with a glass of water. The man drinks and wonders the taste of water. The other man says that he had taken that water from the drinker, but the man says that he did not want that water, that he was supposed to get another one and that he was not supposed to disturb him anymore. The man then says that he was looking for ways to get fired working that way. Later, the man was on the phone talking to someone. When he realizes that his boss was entering the room, he quickly hangs up the phone. She then asks how things were and he says that his work was finished. She says she doesn't like the delay, but the man assures her that everything will be fine. She then says that the worksheet that the man was doing was not good and that he still had to improve a lot. He tells her to stay calm, because he has always done it that way and that in the end it would be very good. She then says that she hopes everything works out and leaves. The man then becomes desperate for not knowing how to do his job and says he would need to ask someone for help. He then takes out his cell phone and calls a woman he knew. He then says that he was an acquaintance of hers from college and that he needed her help to finish a worksheet. He tries to explain why, but she says she was busy and couldn't help him. He then thanks you and hangs up the phone. This doesn't put him off and he soon calls someone else. He calls another friend of his from college. He then says that he needed a big favor from him and asks if he knew how to make a spreadsheet, but he says that he was busy and that he couldn't help him either. The man then tries to think of what he could do. He says he didn't have anyone else to call and didn't know what else he could do. He then remembers another person who could ask for help. He then calls his friend, but he says he couldn't talk as he was in another country. The man then thanks him and hangs up the phone. The man then gets desperate and says he would do it the way he knew how. Sometime later, he hands over the spreadsheet to Chief Sal. She sees that and is very surprised that the quality is so bad. She then asks how he had the nerve to hand that to her. The man then says he had done the way she asked. She says there were a lot of spelling mistakes and she had told him to pay close attention to it. He says that he had little time to do it and that in an hour he wouldn't be able to finish it, but she asks if he didn't feel ashamed of handing it over to her. She says her investors were coming in soon and she couldn't hand it over to them. The other man then says that if she wanted to, he could make the spreadsheet. She then asks if he was sure he got it. He then says yes and that in 20 minutes he would finish the job. The man then says that a janitor couldn't do that job, but she says that she had given him a chance to prove what the man knew how to do, but he let her down. Then she says I would give the other man a chance. He thanks the boss for the chance and says he wouldn't let her down and she says she trusted him. The boss then tells the man to leave, as he doesn't want to see him anymore. Later, the man goes to the other man. He starts watching him and the other man asks what he was doing there. He says he just wanted to see how he did it and that it was okay for him to stay there. The other man then says that he already had his chance and that he should go get himself a glass of water. The man asks if that was serious and he says yes, as he was the manager now. The man soon returns with the glass of water and the other man thanks him. He then leaves and says he's finished the job. The man suspects that and starts looking at the computer to see if it was true. Meanwhile, the other man hands the spreadsheet to the boss and she starts looking at the result. She then says that it was perfect and that she had never seen such a good sheet. She says that she was wrong about him and he says that everything was fine. The boss then says he was hired and the man asks if she would give him her position. She says that he didn't know how to do the job she wanted, but he says that he had little time to do the job and that it was for the boss to think about their friendship. She then says that the only vacancy she had was that of a janitor and that if he wanted he could take the cleaning equipment and start cleaning.